evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. On behalf of the Arts and Humanities Bainbridge, I want to welcome you to the beautiful Bainbridge Island Museum of Art for the 16th annual Island Treasure Awards. Can you believe it's been 16 years that we've been celebrating these artists? I'm Kate Ruffing, and I'm pleased to be here to celebrate all the amazing treasures that we have here right at home. Just looking around this room, I see so many people that I personally hold in awe for everything that you contribute and continue to contribute to our island community. You inspire me. I've often thought of this night as Oscar night on Bainbridge. Some of us use it as a great excuse to get all dressed up, make grand entrances, rub elbows with the famous and infamous. Oh, come on, you know who they are. David, George. I'm not telling you which one's the famous one and which one's the infamous one. Others of you, you put on your best Bainbridge black tie blue jeans, and you never miss the best party of the year. So regardless of your wardrobe or your motivations for being here, all are welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. And then there are the past recipients that honor this night by dusting off their tiaras and their lapel pins. Because surprisingly, I don't see a lot of you wearing them to TNC to do shopping. I think this is unfortunate. I mean, this is a great way to show support for the arts and humanities, and you know what? Never hold back from wearing a tiara in public. Above all, this is the night where the community gets together to reflect on the many human treasures this island holds, and celebrate two new treasures that our jury of peers has unanimously selected as the most deserving of this title. So if you missed all the announcements, and the press, and the line of paparazzi outside didn't tip you off, I'm pleased to inform you that this year's award winners are Cameron Snow and Denise Harris. We are also very excited to have so many past treasures in the audience to help celebrate this event. So come on, this is the time. Show off those tiaras and lapel pins. Well, I can have the past winners please rise so we can thank you for your gifts to the cultural fabric of this community. You all look fabulous. And now I want to acknowledge the Island Treasure jurors. These are 5 wonderful, anonymous citizens who read all the letters of nomination and determined the results. If you are in the room, please do not stand up. It really causes issues with the anonymity of your contribution. But we do thank you for all your diligence and service to this remarkable event. And because these anonymous jurors can't tell you themselves, I will share with you that they remarked in the course of their day-long deliberations that both of these women are truly deserving to be called Renaissance women. Each one, they agreed, has mastered so many different mediums. Each is marked by boundless curiosity and willingness to try new forms of expression. And each is a humanist, as the term was understood in the Renaissance period. That is to say, each is a person holding the belief that humans are limitless in their capacity for excellence and that all should work to develop their abilities in all areas of accomplishment. Nicely done, ladies. As you will hear, and probably already know, both Cameron and Denise embody these qualities. So now, in accordance with the tradition that began some 15 years ago, I will ask the winners from last year to read the award statements for this year's honorees. In 2015, Art Grice was named an Island Treasure for his outstanding work as a fine arts photographer and for his ongoing efforts as a teacher and mentor, encouraging those around him to understand, to care about, and to participate in all forms of creativity. Arts photography has always spoken to my heart. Personally, my spirit gets pulled into your compositions for the way you can capture light and contrast and movement. It is really a powerful experience. So I would like to invite Art Grice to the stage to present the 2016 award to Cameron Snow.
Thank you. Do I have everyone's attention? At first glance, Cameron Snow might not look like an intrepid explorer, prepared to leave at a moment's notice for some unfamiliar part of the globe. He's down here. Prepared to leave at a, is that better? Yeah? Prepared to leave at a moment's notice for some unfamiliar part of the globe where she has never been before. Knows no one and will need to negotiate on her own the tasks of managing a household among people who do not speak English. One might more easily imagine her painting botanicals in a sunlit garden, or perhaps helping an arts organization acquire items for an auction. In fact, she has done all of those things with equal spirit and grace. When Cameron married Chris Snow, the year they graduated from their respective colleges, they set off for Pakistan, Chris's first post in a foreign service. Along with Chris, Cameron had taken the classes offered in Urdu, figuring that she would be the one having to shop for food in the town bazaar and deal with the people providing essential services. Later in Chris's 36-year career, the Snows would certainly visit glittering embassies. Early on, however, they lived in the far outskirts of towns, and Cameron's first jobs were teaching art to children in a refugee camp and illustrating a manual for workers in a leprosy clinic. In the field of art, Cameron had received an excellent grounding in composition at Mills College and was a serious painter, initially working in abstracts. Her art developed and changed along with her experiences living in different countries. While living in India, she completed a series of paintings based on a line in Emerson's poem, Brahma, that expressed the duality of Hinduism. These were later exhibited in the American ambassador's residence with Kenneth Keating and Indira Gandhi present. Later in London, Cameron entered a master's program at the Royal College of Art, refreshing her drawing skills and for the first time beginning to focus on drawing people. In Brussels, the Snows lived next to a beech forest where Cameron painted hundreds of watercolors. And in Israel, she turned to pastels to capture the beauty of sweeping dunes and carob trees. Her pieces, her pieces were later put into a traveling exhibit by the Society for the Protection of Nature in Tel Aviv to draw attention to their cause. It was in Snow's final post in Paris that Cameron learned to paint on porcelain, a wonderful medium for her botanical images that she loved. When the Snows moved to Bainbridge Island in 1998, Cameron brought with her not only the different artistic skills she had honed over 36 years in 9 different countries, but also a new self-confidence and willingness to take on even more challenges. She began to produce videos using borrowed equipment and learning to edit her work. The same courage she had developed ordering vegetables in Urdu in a Karachi town market, she now applied when approaching a science teacher in his classroom or a visiting professor in a lecture hall. "Hi, would you like to make a movie with me?" The Return of the Plankton in 2004 was Cameron's first substantial video production. Its exploration of marine life in Puget Sound provided valuable insights and information about the seasons in our Puget Sound waters. Her next film, Forest in the City, Cameron combined her love of nature with her belief in the effectiveness of community action as she related the story of Bainbridge residents uniting to save the Grand Forest from development. And as one of her nominators tells us, to complete the third piece of her island trilogy, Cameron is now working with a University of Washington geologist to create a 3-part video that explains the geological formation of Bainbridge Island. This environmental series is the only one of its kind, a true gift to all of us. Cameron's interest in science is balanced with her love of the arts. Another nominator wrote, Cameron, a lover of classical music, also took on a large educational project in collaboration with the Bainbridge Symphony Orchestra. Working with volunteer filmmakers, she filmed interviews, rehearsals, and finally a full performance of Peter and the Wolf. As a board member of Bainbridge Arts and Crafts, she began making short films on gallery artists to use in promoting and preserving their art. And as a founding member of Bainbridge Island Museum of Art, she produced wonderful documentaries on some of the artists who have had solo shows in its galleries. Cameron shares with us all her observations of life around her in paint, pencil, pastel, and porcelain, and more recently in high-definition videography. But let's let this gifted artist speak for herself in a conversation filmed in December by Steve Stolee.
An important influence in my life was my grandfather. He used to say things to me that really resonated in my life, and he would say things like, Cameron, the most important thing, the one thing that matters, is the life of your mind. I think I prayed once, God, I don't care about being beautiful, but please make me intelligent. And I think, that was my grandfather's influence. My grandfather and grandmother sang in the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Every year they took me to the Messiah. And those oak benches at the tabernacle were so hard, and my feet wouldn't touch the floor. And I had to sit on this leg and then that leg, and it seemed interminable. And when they got to the Hallelujah chorus, and it sounded like the end, and then there was more. So it seemed like a never-ending thing. Well, we almost always go to hear the Messiah in the Christmas season, and it seems short now. It goes by in a flash, and it's all very familiar, and but these are the things that they did for me when I was young. And I remember a fourth grade teacher, Rhea Ferry Bailey. And she really encouraged me to be a visual artist, asked me to help her with all kinds of stage scenery and things like that. And I remembered this moment. We were taking a science test, and I was sitting there looking at this blank paper, and I was supposed to write a description of how a vacuum works. I'm not sure I could even do that today. And Mrs. Bailey came down the aisle and said to me, "Cameron, draw me a picture." So I think maybe she meant draw a picture of a vacuum. But what I drew for her was a picture of a stag with 8 points standing on a bluff in the sunset. Below the bluff, there were tangles of grapevines with big purple grapes on them. Mind you, I'm 10 years old at this point, and probably influenced by Disney's Bambi. Probably I saw that 7 times, So, but the sort of encouraging thing is that Mrs. Bailey framed that picture of the stag and hung it in her classroom until she retired. Some years later, when I went back to see her, it was still there. My other great interest was science. I loved biological science particularly. I loved botany. And I thought, well, maybe I can make a living as a scientific illustrator. Fortunately, Chris came along and saved me from having to make a living as an artist. And we were married in 1962, right after we graduated. Of course, there was a lead up to that. In 1957, we were each chosen from our respective high schools for the American Field Service Student Exchange Program. He went to East High School, and I went to West High School. So never the twain will meet. But we did meet. We met in the passport office. 17 years old. It was in Salt Lake at that time. It was at the post office, and there was just a little room about as big as a kitchen where there were a couple of clerks and a counter, and Chris with his mother and me with my mother arrived at the passport counter at the same time. We were both going to be American Field Service students. So his mother said to him, "Chris, isn't that the little Pedersen girl?" And he, not wanting to admit that he knew who I was or that he had a mother or anything, said, "I don't think so." And my mother said to me, "Cameron, isn't that the snow boy?" And I said, "No." And then his mother said to him, "Go over and say hello." And so he did. He came over and said hello. And then after that, we met at AFS gatherings that were preparing us for our trips abroad to live with families. And he was given a family in East Bengal, one of the first AFS groups to go to East Pakistan. And I was assigned to a very nice family in Oslo, Norway. So we went, it was a summer program for 3 months, and we were on the same ship crossing the Atlantic, so seasick that there was no romance there. Then I went to Oslo, and he went to Pakistan. When we came back, I had gained 15 pounds, and he had lost about 40. We didn't recognize each other. We kind of just, he went to college on the East Coast, and I went to college on the West Coast. So one summer after our sophomore years, we both came back home to Salt Lake, and he called me up, and he said, "Well, have you seen anybody this summer?" I said, "No, I haven't seen a soul." He said, well, would you like to go to the movies? And by the end of that summer, we became engaged. So, but then we still had 2 years of college to get through. Unfortunately, we were at opposite ends of the country, so we made it through. At Yale, he had studied international relations. And he was, I'm pretty sure it was his suggestion, but I was keen on the idea that we should travel, live for extended periods in different cultures, study languages, and try to know about other people. And I thought that was such a good idea. We were 22 at the time, you know, and I thought, let's do that for a while. Well, we did it for 36 years. I think India and Pakistan were really important and formative because those were our first posts. And we sort of found ourselves, in a sense, there. And we loved those countries. We loved being there. It was rich, interesting, really wonderful. All these drawings. So now we get to Belgium, where they had this beautiful Forêt de Soigne, and the forest grew right close to our house. So I used to just go there and watercolor. And so I have a lot of I had a lot of watercolors from Belgium, but they sold, so I only have a few. And here's Israel. There was I met a poet, and her poems struck me as really evocative of the landscape. So we decided to have a show together, her poems and my drawings of the landscape. So here are those paintings from Israel. They're actually pastel, but I call them paintings. I don't remember exactly how we found Bainbridge Island, but we did find it, and it just seemed perfect. So beautiful, a beautiful place to live, high level of education in the population, and wonderful people. So I had this question, well, can you really just move there? Can you really just decide you want to live there and move there? And it turned out you could. So we moved here, and we linked up with some other people who'd been in the Foreign Service, Harriet and Dan Alexander, and they introduced us to Sally and Merrill Robison. And one day, Merrill Robison said to me, Cameron, do you realize that if you go down to BITV and you plunk down $25 membership, you can become a television producer? And I said, well, you know what? That sounds pretty good. I went down, signed up, $25, and I met Kit Spear there. And Kit took me in hand and taught me, you know, how to be a producer. Eventually, I met John Williams at the television station, and he was doing underwater videography. So what a thrilling thing to think about. And I said, John, would you like to work together on a video? He said, I'd love that, Cameron. So we became partners in a number of things, but the first one was Return of the Plankton underwater Puget Sound. Then my second project was the Grand Forest. Connie Waddington was one of the leaders who got together and saved the Grand Forest from development. And Lee Cross, my sister-in-law, said, go get Connie's story. She has a wonderful story. So I sat with Connie, camera rolling, and Connie told me about how the people of Bainbridge Island saved the Grand Forest from development.
As we drive down Miller Road, the forest arches over the road, and we can catch glimpses of light on the moss and the ferns of the understory. This is our landscape.
But now I'm in the process of making the longest, most difficult film that I've made, and it's probably going to be one of my best. And it's called The Geological Formation of Bainbridge Island. I started reading the geology of the region, trying to understand what I'm dealing with here. And I realized what a wonderful, interesting story this is. And then I saw that Gregory Guillen, geologist, was going to give a talk at Strawberry Hill on earthquake preparedness. So I contacted him and I said, Greg, would you like to make, this is on the phone, I'm a stranger, but I think the Foreign Service gave me this confidence to just approach people and say hello. I said, Greg, hello, would you like to make a movie together? And he said yes. So we started this project in 2010, and it looks like it could go on forever.
It's a plot of the record of sound waves that have gone down into the earth and then bounced back up. And this
honestly, when we started that project, I thought it would be about the glacial age, which is only 2 million years old. But Greg said to me, no, this story goes back 30 million years. We have dated rocks 30 million years old. Let's start there. And so, okay. There is the science side that I love. I'm so interested in how things work in nature. But there is the art side as well. And I was so thrilled to think that this island was going to have its own art museum. It just knocked me over. And I knew that I wanted to be a part of that and make films for the museum if I could. And the museum has been so welcoming and given me space to work with artists who are always so interesting, so thoughtful to talk to. And some of the really delightful times I've had with Jenny Anderson or Richard Jesse Watson or, Margie McDonald. These artists are wonderful as subjects, and so we have a nice little collection for the archive at the museum, and this has been a most satisfying part of my video production.
The Island Treasure Award Committee is proud to present its award for 2016 to Cameron Snow.
Thank you for coming this evening. It's reassuring to see so many friendly faces. The end of last year, Cynthia Sears passed me a note. And the note said, Steve Stolee will make a video about Cameron Snow, Island Treasure. And I said, no. And she said, yes. So, thank you, Steve. And thank you, Joel Sackett, for taking so much trouble with the imagery. I'm delighted, of course. And thank you, Anonymous, for thinking of me. It's very appreciated. I think this might be about some of my video projects. And I think of the many people who've stepped forward to help me with that. My video pal, Kathy Belfay, but the people who step in front of the camera. Most recently, Kay Sakai Nakau, who is sitting on the front row, has shared her story of growing up on Bainbridge on a strawberry farm. It's part of the joy of making videos is meeting and working with people like Kay. And it's a highly collaborative process. So, speaking of collaboration, you will have noticed in the gallery on the lower floor some copper shapes dangling from a net. Every shape was made by a student taking part in a project shared by BIMA, Kitty Mew, the schools, with a grant from the Community Foundation. We must feel very grateful for the people who are working in those organizations, for all they do to support the community and the creativity of all of us. What they do is very important to making this place as special as it is for us to live here. And I'd like to thank everyone who has participated in making this such a lovely evening. Alan Bush, linchpin. And the staff at the museum, good heavens, look what they've done. And so many others who have made it a really beautiful evening for all of us to share. Chris and I love this community. And we've lived here longer than we've lived anywhere else. So we've decided we're going to unpack. And we're going to stay as long as we can. Thank you very much.
Wow, right? Yeah, thank you, Cameron. And congratulations again. It has been a true pleasure for me to get to know you over the past few years as a lot of us have worked to build the museum and film it. I was absolutely thrilled when I learned that you were going to be one of the distinguished award winners for this year. So our second award is going to be presented tonight by last year's winners, Greg and Diane. They are collectively known, of course, as Mezzolini. And kudos to you both, by the way. You led the trend on the celebrity super couple names, because before there was Brangelina and Tomcat and Benifer, there was Mezzolini. This amazing duo was celebrated in 2015 for their work in glass, creating everything from stunning fused glass installations in public places like the Waypoint Park, directly across the street, and the library, to exquisite tableware that is in a lot of people's homes all across the region. They are also honored for their mentoring groups, such as, and this is only the one example, the Special Needs Foundation Kids, to help them create a fused glass installation that was exhibited at the Seattle Museum of Art. I've had a chance actually to work with this amazing super couple and watch their collaboration, and it's amazing to watch it move from ideation into the beautiful works that they create. Working with glass is challenging, and you make it look delicate, fluid, and easy, which inspires me to maybe try it someday. So I would like to invite Diane and Greg to the stage to present the 2016 award to Denise Harris.
Thank you, Kate. That was very nice. Denise Harris. Oh, can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. I can't see. Denise Harris says with a laugh that she is often referred to as a jack of all trades, meaning someone who does a lot of things pretty well, but not really an expert in any one field. The Island Treasure Award jury disagreed with that statement, but did wonder about the familiar phrase. They thought it needed some investigation and naturally turned to Google. Did you know that the first time Jack of All Trades appeared in print, it was a booklet written by one Robert Greene in 1592? And that Mr. Greene was applying that term dismissively to a writer named William Shakespeare. So Denise, it looks like maybe you and the Bard. Nevertheless, as I say, the Island Treasure jury disagreed with the use of the term. They preferred the phrase Renaissance woman. It is true, they said, that Denise is multi-talented and that she works in a great number of different disciplines and crafts. On the other hand, her mastery of these diverse fields is undeniable. Denise seems to have moved steadily through her creative life, picking up one or another skills from friends, associates, or just someone across the room who is doing something she's very interested in. Even though she studied art in college and received a master's degree in design, along with a California teaching certificate, she has learned most of what she knows by doing, by watching others work at the craft and asking them lots of questions, and then practicing what she has shown. She is a person of endless curiosity and of energies one can only describe as remorseless. According to our last calculations, Denise is accomplished in the following. Are you ready? Graphic, how many fingers? Graphic design, sculpture, leaded glass window making, wood carving, drawing, watercolors, silk screening, carpentry, poster making, jewelry making, set construction, acting, singing, mobile making, wagon building, sign carving, set painting, acrylics, print making, and of course, building musical instruments of the ukulele, like the ukulele she plays at the uke group at Village Music every Saturday. How many? 20? 20. Okay. Perhaps the artwork of hers most familiar to Denise's public on Bainbridge Island are the miniature metal sculptures that she has created for multiple shows at Bainbridge Arts and Crafts. Sculptures that have been featured in shows at BIMA and have been part of the museum's permanent collection. We sometimes refer to these beautiful pieces as jewelry for houses. And you know how much our homes welcome a little bling to make them feel cherished. Denise also believes in community and is an active participant in community events, from performing in musical groups like chorale or side-by-side and coordinating the celebration and the decoration of Bainbridge Island's Winslow Christmas tree, a ceremony that her beloved late husband, Bob, initiated. She carved the signs at Winslow Center for Lottie's, Heyday Farms, Village Music, O'Connor Architects, Pandamore, and the Treehouse. And the creation of these signs, as one of Denise's many nominators points out, visually united the buildings and helped create a sense of unity to the whole development. One of her admirers commented that Denise seemed to have applied the concept of the one-man band to her life on the island. One can easily imagine her singing a song she wrote while playing an instrument she built in front of a set she designed and painted, below a sign she carved for a site and before an audience drawn there by the posters that she created. The only thing is, said the writer, Denise seems to be even happier as a member of the chorus than as the star. Quote, she is not one to toot her own horn, but of course maybe that would change if she constructed one. We'll have to think about that. So now we ask, is Denise more jack of all trades, or a Renaissance woman, or a one-man band? You are all welcome to choose your favorite term for her. We believe that with her talent and dedication in a large number of fields and her commitment to strength and diversity in our community, she is most of all an island treasure.
Now let's hear what she has to say about herself and her work in a short film made by Steve Stolee last December.
I was actually born in Santa Monica, California, but my parents were given a home as a wedding gift in Pacific Palisades, which at the time was very rural, actually. And the street that we lived on was called Kagawa, and it was a very small two-bedroom home and had a lot of vacant lots. I had kids that were my age, and we would get in trouble doing all sorts of things. We would dig holes in vacant lots and put boards over the top, and creative endeavors, I guess you'd say. A big change in my life happened because my mother died of leukemia when I was 7, and I had an older brother who was 11 at the time, and a sister who was just turning 4, and my youngest sister, Celeste, was 18 months old. So certainly a big change. And I would say one of the most influential people in my life was my aunt, whose name was Bernice, but everyone called her Aunt Bernie. And Aunt Bernie was a registered nurse, and so she kind of took on taking care of us. She would come in the morning and make breakfast for us and get us in our uniforms to go to school, and send us off. And then she would go to her apartment, which was in Hollywood, and sleep, and then go to work again at night. And she really helped support us when we were growing up. I mean, one of my sisters had braces on her teeth that she paid for, and was a big part of my life. So when I graduated from high school, I ended up leaving the house in Pacific Palisades and living with Aunt Bernie, who lived in Hollywood. And I worked at a bank for about a year. And then through relatives, they paid my way. I applied and got into Art Center College of Design. And for me, who had never really done art, I had never taken art in school, and they gave you these long list of materials that you had to have, like, you know, Winsor Newton paintbrushes and Winsor Newton gouache and certain kinds of paper and things, and I didn't even know what they were talking about, and it was all really expensive, of course. So, but, you know, kind of made my way, ended up moving from Aunt Bernie about 4 blocks into an apartment over a garage, and with 2 kids that I had, kids, they were my age, but I had met them through being a Girl Scout counselor. And at Art Center, one of them happened to be a dwarf, and her name was Beverly Armstrong, a fine artist, and she was only 3'10". And I walked into one of the life drawing classes one day, and she's sitting there with her feet straight out and her board on her feet, because it worked pretty well as an easel if you're that small. And I walked by her, and she was wearing a white regulation Girl Scout blouse. And I walked by and I said, "Nice blouse." And of course, she was completely surprised, but that's how we started this friendship, because I knew it was a Girl Scout blouse. So she called me, you know, after about a semester and said, "You know, I've been living with my aunt and uncle, and I need a place to live. Do you want to be roommates?" And so I said, "Sure." So she ended up being my roommate. And then another person that I also was a counselor with, the 3 of us had this tiny place that we had, and nobody had furniture, and we, you know, built a phone booth out of a freezer box and painted it red and had a fine time. You know, I mean, it was a crazy, crazy time. I was also a counselor, a camp counselor, at a camp called Clear Creek that was up in the Angeles National Forest, and it was run by the Los Angeles City Schools. And one of the, you know, camp leaders was this man named Everett. And Everett and I became friends and ended up getting married. And so I went from this house over this small place and married, and we ended up living behind his mother's house in kind of a garage kind of thing. I don't know. We went from bad to the same. Anyway, so we lived there for a couple years, and then found a house in the Hollywood Hills that was right below the Hollywood sign, and it had an enormous leaded window that faced the Hollywood sign, and huge vaulted ceilings. It was a castle. It had turrets. It was, you know, had incredible atmosphere. Everett and I lived there for 7 years, and then we ended up getting a divorce, and I moved to the Pacific Northwest because my brother Jim had moved up here. So I lived in Seattle, and I can remember being fascinated by being out on the streets, and there were all these people during the day that were outside, and you think, well, what do these people do what are they doing outside? Why aren't they working? Because, you know, I'd been a teacher for 7 years when I was in Los Angeles and married, and, you know, we both taught school. My husband Everett was a drama teacher, and so I played in the orchestra when they did musicals, and, you know, helped do stuff at Wilson High School. And at the school that I taught, the Sylmar High School, which was in the San Fernando Valley, I taught 3-dimensional design and jewelry making and stagecraft and yearbook. So I taught a variety of things. So when I came up here, my brother and I, you know, talked about doing a restaurant, a Mexican restaurant. And that's how I ended up buying the studio next to the parking lot. That was going to be a Mexican restaurant called Carmina's Veranda. But then, you know, the Mexican restaurant didn't work out, and I had this old house on this piece of property, and I inherited the parking lot. And of course, that ended up being, you know, the wisest decision that I ever didn't make intentionally. You know, people would say, "God, you know, you are so smart to have bought that." And of course, I didn't buy it for any smart reason. It just ended up being smart in the long run, you know. That's the way life is, you know. Anyway, when I was a child, what I really decided I wanted to do was I want to work in museums, and I wanted to make the displays that were in the museums and the walls, you know, where they would show little villages and things. And I would take my allowance and buy models at the hobby shop and build these little models. So I was always interested in miniatures. And I think that kind of ran over into me starting to do these small jewelry pieces. I would say that the reason I got into doing these small sculptures is because Bainbridge Arts and Crafts asked me to do some show, and it was a while ago, certainly. And once I was given the idea, whatever the show theme was, you know, I would start to think about what I wanted to do. And it was always small because I've always been interested in small things. But my shop has all sorts of things to choose from in it because of my background in woodworking and jewelry making, certainly. And I know when I work, I think it happens with a lot of artists, you know, you start working on a piece and you work and pretty soon I'm like, oh, shiny things. So, you know, I'm over here and I'm doing something and then I go, oh, other shiny things. Oh, I'll go over there and we'll do something, you know. So this is kind of the way the process is for me anyway. It is not linear at all. You know, I start usually with some kind of drawing of what I'm thinking about I'm going to do, and then it takes on a life of its own. But it's been interesting to go back and look at the pieces that I've done, because when I work on them, and I think this is something artists do, and I hate it, is you don't do it until you have to. And so I end up working on these pieces until I am putting the last piece, and I've run out of time, on it, and I take it down to Arts and Crafts. And then I mostly don't see it again. And so I can't appreciate what I did because I am so involved in it that I'm tired of it. You know, it becomes so much pressure that it's difficult to appreciate it. And I'm so close to it. Like one of the pieces that I did was called Radio Waves, and it's a little radio that's, you know, maybe this tall, and it has a boat on the top of it. And so I had to go up in all the wood that exists on this property, of which there is mountains of it. But I had to find a piece of wood that had that kind of crest for a wave coming off of it. I didn't care what the rest of the wood looked like, but I had to have that part of it. And so I started with that piece of wood, and then of course had to cut the rest of the radio so it looked like one of those pointed radios. But the top part is all natural, and that just happens to be the piece of wood that I found up there. But you know, they're small burls and things, so I worked small, you know, and so I have a full shop up there of just woodworking things. And of course, then I've also carved the signs for Linwood, for the Peter O'Connor and the bakery and all those. So that's the other end of the spectrum, and that's all wood that's up there too. So I go up there and go through the maple, go through the cedar and stuff, and find, you know, the pieces that I'm going to use to carve big signs. The biggest, of course, thing that I've done with woodworking is the gypsy wagon. And the gypsy wagon, you know, was one of these, again, these crazy things. You know, I said to Bob one day, God, it'd be really fun to build a gypsy wagon. And so the next thing I know, there's some man that lived in Silverdale and had all these wagons on his property, and he died. And so the woman was selling these wagons. So Bob brings 2 buckboards home and says, well, let's build a gypsy wagon out of one of these wagons. And so we contacted, through Deborah Cheadle, she knew someone other side of the mountains that restored wagons. And he said you could not build a gypsy wagon on a straight axle buckboard. You just couldn't, because it had to have springs. So we ended up selling him those 2 wagons, and he bought at auction the undercarriage for the gypsy wagon. I worked with a boat builder named Dave Sutter, who's a very accomplished woodworker, and he was kind of like the brains behind the wagon. I was the one that had to do the carving, which was really hard because you can't give it back once you've carved it away. So we worked together, and we worked for a couple of years anyway, building this wagon, and it became, you know, its own thing. I mean, if I had known at all that it was going to be so much work, I would have never attempted it. But trust me, I would have not started it, except Bob brings home these 2 buckboards. It's like, anyway. I'm enjoying traveling. You know, I've been doing quite a bit of traveling, and that's also fun. And one of the things I do when I travel is out of the United States is that I keep a journal, a daily journal, and I draw a picture every day. And I've been doing this for 30 years. And so over that time, out of all those travels out of the United States, I've probably drawn 2,000 pictures, and every day. And so in the early years that I was doing it, Bob and I would be somewhere, and Bob always he would always point out what he wanted me to draw because there was usually a coffee shop there. And so he would say, "Don't you want to draw that?" And no, Bob, not necessarily. I'll know when I want to draw something. So I would, draw a picture a day, and then I would write kind of what we had done for the day. And it was a great way to keep a journal. And I have continued to do that over all these years. And they're all now in these books that are about this size with these beautiful leather covers. And I'm just about to start, I think, on my 7th book. And I don't know how many pages. They have about 250 pages per book. So I've been doing a lot of drawing, But it's great to go back. You go back 12 years to Croatia. And I can go back, and it absolutely puts me in that location because I sat there and drew that particular picture. Like I said, I've just finished a book, so I'm just about to start the next book, the next adventure. Yeah. So, on a Friday in early December, my longtime friend Steve Stolee invites me to lunch. We're sitting there chatting away when Cynthia Sears comes in and over to the table and starts making small talk, and then passes me this small yellow sheet of paper. I open it up and it says, "Steve Stolee will be making a short video of you entitled Island Treasure Award Winner 2016. Wow, I'm thrilled. Certainly taken by surprise, and I'm thinking, what an incredible honor. And then my next thought was, uh-oh, that involves giving a speech. But then I reasoned it should be an easy task. I do theater, and I come by writing genetically. Every one of my dad's family were writers. My grandfather, Ray, wrote for Paramount Studios. My grandmother, Margaret, was a society writer for newspapers. All 4 of my father's siblings made their way through life writing. So writing and talking about it should be easy. Well, here's what I've realized. One of the most interesting aspects of receiving this award has really made me reflect on my life. One doesn't dwell on one's entire life in a condensed space of time, unless you're writing your own obituary. But this award pushed these reflections into the present. From this life scrutiny, it became apparent how much I've been formed by the people around me. As a child, I was nurtured by strong women. My mother, Yvonne, and her best friend, Helen Amistoy, would take me, my brother, Marshall, and Helen's 2 daughters, Cammie and Margot, all 3 of whom are here this evening, on what they called Saturday expeditions. We would go to the opera, we would go to theater, we would go to museums. Every Saturday, we would go somewhere. Through these adventures, these 2 women certainly instilled in me an inclination towards the arts. My Aunt Bernie also contributed to my beginnings. She paid for my piano lessons, and she paid for my ballet lessons, which didn't pay off. But she was the one whose support opened that door to the possibilities. I didn't really get involved in art until I went to the Art Center College of Design. And that education was made possible because I was lucky enough to have relatives and friends of my parents who helped fund me. Those individuals made it possible for me to receive the education that started me down my life's path. I received that master's degree in design and a California teaching credential from Cal State LA, and that's when I married my first husband, a drama teacher. Through him, I developed my love of theater, backstage, on stage, and from the audience. When I moved to the Pacific Northwest, a whole new world of possibilities presented itself. There was theater, where I could design sets and perform, each a haven for the interaction among a wide range of ages and talents through art, sometimes created in solitude, sometimes a collaboration, but always shared with others. Also with music, where I could join together with others to create harmony. In each of these disciplines, I have had the privilege of interacting with others to create art. So, reflecting on my life, it turns out I've always been encircled by people who have allowed me to create. I feel so fortunate to have stumbled upon Bainbridge Island, where I've been surrounded by a loving and caring family, most of whom followed me here. Extraordinary, fascinating friends, and crazy collaborators. All along this road, I have been totally nurtured as an artist, my husband, Bob, having been my biggest fan. When I was younger, as they said, I was called a jack of all trades and master of none. But, you know, looking back on it, I thoroughly embraced the title. It fits me. I wear it as a badge of honor because, my wonderful friends, look where it has gotten me today. I want to thank each of you for being here to share this honor with me. I am thrilled and giddy with happiness.
Congratulations, Denise. You are another person that I was absolutely thrilled when I learned that you were going to be honored tonight. Us redheads have to stick together. But seriously, your contributions to this community have been very widespread, and I would choose Renaissance Woman as the way to classify you. Well, that concludes tonight's Island Treasure Award presentation. I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate the arts and humanities on Bainbridge Island, which is really part of our DNA. Please remember that those anonymous people who are selected each year to write the nominations and those who are chosen to serve on the jury are all part of the Island Treasure Pool, and you are all welcome to join. So if you would like to be considered for either of these essential jobs next year, please leave your name and contact number with us tonight or contact us at islandtreasureawards@gmail.com. A few other thank yous before we go downstairs. I want to thank Channy Peters of the Bainbridge Community Broadcasting for interviewing our 2016 Island Treasures and creating 2 amazing podcasts. If you haven't heard them, please check them out at bestofbcb.org and look for the links under artists and artwork to get those podcasts. And no list of thank yous or acknowledgement is complete without recognizing Cynthia Sears and Frank Buxton. Talk about your celebrity power couple. As you all know, what these 2 have done for this community can't be listed quickly. It is a dear treasure of mine to get to know both of you and work with you on the arts and humanities in this little island community and beyond. You inspire me with your generosity and your passion for what you do. And I know you don't like public recommendation, but this is what happens when you give me the mic. So please, one last time, let's recognize this fantastic couple, because without them, this award would not exist. hope you have an opportunity as we break here to look around at the wonderful Island Treasure Showcase that BIMA has on display in this gallery. A big shout out to Greg Robinson and the staff that has worked amazingly hard. You see this in motion, and it's amazing what can happen here. It will be on display until February 28th, and I hope you do take some time to take a look at all our amazing treasures and the works that they've contributed. I am so glad you could be here tonight for the 2016 Treasures. Thank you again, and please remember that the arts and humanities are alive and well on this island because of you. So please continue your support of all the artists, performers, activities, shows, organizations, creators, and innovators. And so now I would like to generously ask you to go downstairs and enjoy the buffet. We have some fantastic culinary artists that have been hard at work, and have a wonderful evening. And we'll see you back here next year, either in your tiaras, your lapel pins, your blue jeans, or your ball gowns, to honor more treasures. Thank you and good night.